It was a cold night, the kind of night where silence feels heavier than sound. The park was nearly empty, its swings creaking faintly in the breeze, shadows stretching unnaturally long beneath the faint glow of the streetlights. In such stillness, nothing unusual was expected. But that night, something was different. Something was hiding in the darkness, something fragile yet unyielding, and it was about to shake everyone who stumbled upon it. The police were not searching the park for fun. They had received a call. A passerby had reported hearing muffled crying, soft and broken, like the sobs of a child. At first, no one believed it. How could a child be left alone in the park at this hour? But as the call persisted, the officers rushed out, flashlights in hand, their boots crunching against the gravel pathways. As their beams of light cut through the darkness, a sense of tension filled the air. Their instincts told them this was not going to be ordinary. The night was too quiet, the shadows too still. And then, just as one officer swung his light towards a cluster of trees, he froze. His hand trembled slightly. What he saw was not what he expected at all. There, pressed against the roots of a large oak tree, was a little girl, no more than 6 years old. Her hair was tangled, her face streaked with dirt and tears, and her tiny arms were wrapped tightly around the thick fur of a German shepherd. The dog stood in front of her, its body tense, eyes glowing in the flashlight beam. It wasn't attacking, but its stance was clear. This was not a dog you wanted to challenge. It was protecting her with everything it had. The officers lowered their voices. One of them whispered, "My God, is she hiding with the dog?" Another replied, "She's not just hiding, he's guarding her." The German shepherd let out a low growl as the light drew closer, its body shifting protectively, blocking the girl from view. Every muscle in its body was coiled like a spring, ready to defend her if anyone dared come near. But the little girl clung to him tighter, burying her face in his fur, as if the whole world was too terrifying to face without him. The officers paused, unsure what to do. They could sense the fear, the desperation in that child's trembling body. And yet, they also sensed something else, an unbreakable bond between the girl and the dog. Minutes passed in tense silence. The officers didn't want to frighten the child further. They had no idea why she was here, why she was alone, or why the dog seemed to be her only shield. But they knew one thing: this was not an ordinary encounter. One officer slowly crouched down, speaking softly, "Hey sweetheart, it's okay. You're safe now, we're here to help you." The girl didn't respond. She only held onto the German shepherd tighter. The dog's ears flicked, its eyes darting between the police and the girl, unsure who to trust. The scene felt like a fragile glass about to shatter. One wrong move, one raised voice, and the fragile trust in that moment would be lost forever. And yet, hidden within this quiet standoff was a story. A story of survival, loyalty, and a secret so heavy that even the strongest hearts would ache once it was revealed. For now, the police could only see fragments: a terrified child, a loyal German shepherd, and a mystery in the cold night. But little did they know, what they were about to uncover would not only explain this unusual bond but also leave them shaken to their core. As the night dragged on, their attempts to coax her out were met with silence. It wasn't fear of the police that held her back, it was something deeper. Something that had forced her to trust no one except the dog at her side. The German shepherd's eyes never wavered. He wasn't just an animal. In that moment, he was a soldier, a guardian, a parent, and a friend. And behind him, the girl trembled, waiting for the world to either break her again, or prove, for once, that it could be kind. And so, the first chapter of this haunting encounter began, under the cold light of the street lamps, where loyalty stood like a wall between a fragile child and the rest of the world. The dog's growl echoed softly under the dim glow of the park lamps. It wasn't a threatening sound, it was a warning that no harm should come near the fragile little soul hiding behind him. The officers held back, exchanging looks. One of them slowly lowered his flashlight, knowing too much brightness would only make the girl hide further into the German shepherd's fur. "Sweetheart, it's okay," the officer whispered again, his voice breaking through the silence of the night. "We just want to help you. Nobody will hurt you, we promise." The little girl's small shoulders shook, but still, she said nothing. Her fingers curled deeper into the thick fur of her guardian. The German shepherd, sensing her fear, pressed closer to her, tilting his head slightly, as though telling her silently that he was there, as always. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, one officer gestured to his partner to give them space. They stepped back slightly, lowering their stance, trying not to look intimidating. The dog's growl softened into deep, watchful breaths. The tension, though still sharp, began to shift. And then, slowly, the girl lifted her head from the dog's fur. For the first time, her tear-streaked face appeared in the faint light. Her eyes were wide, broken, but not empty. They were clinging to something, the only thing she trusted, the dog beside her. "Is he your dog?" one officer asked softly. The girl blinked, hesitant. Then, in a voice so fragile it could barely be heard, she whispered, "He's my friend." Those 3 words struck deeper than any explanation could. Friend, not pet, not guard dog. Friend, a word that carried in it years of loyalty, warmth, and an unspoken promise. The officers exchanged glances. Something was not right. Children did not hide in parks at midnight with dogs unless there was a story behind it. And this story was starting to show its cracks. The German Shepherd relaxed only slightly, his ears flicking back and forth as if listening for danger. The officers noticed scars along his fur, old wounds, healed over time, signs of a dog that had fought before. Who had he been protecting all this time? And then the images began to form in the officers' minds. A child, perhaps living in fear. A house that was not a home. And this dog, the one creature standing between her and the cruelty of the world. The girl's breathing hitched as though she could feel their thoughts. "Please don't take him away," she begged suddenly, clutching the dog tighter. "Please, don't take him. He's all I have." The desperation in her voice froze the air. The German Shepherd leaned into her, resting his heavy head on her shoulder, almost as if he understood every word. His deep brown eyes looked at the officers with silent defiance. One officer crouched again, careful not to get too close. "We're not going to take him away. But we need to know, why are you out here? Why are you hiding?" The little girl's lips trembled. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, burying her face once more in the dog's fur. For a moment, it seemed like she would never speak. And then, in fragments, the truth began to slip through. "He saved me," she whispered. Every time they hurt me, he saved me." The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy and suffocating. The officers felt their throats tighten. The dog's protective growl now made sense. It wasn't simply instinct. It was history. It was memory. The girl began to tremble harder, her voice cracking with each broken word. At home, it was never safe. They shouted, they hit, they. Her small voice trailed off, unable to finish. But she didn't need to. The officers understood. The German Shepherd licked her cheek gently, as though wiping away the memories. He had been there, every single time. Standing between her and the storm. Taking blows meant for her. Fighting off dangers bigger than himself. He had been more than a friend, he had been her shield. The officers' flashlights dimmed as they lowered them completely, not wanting to blind her with harsh light anymore. This was no longer a rescue. This was a revelation. They could see the pieces now. This child hadn't wandered off into the park. She had run from the only place she should have felt safe, her own home. And the German Shepherd had run with her, refusing to leave her alone. The night deepened, but in the small circle of light beneath that oak tree, the bond between a child and a dog told a story louder than any words could. The police were witnesses now, not intruders. Witnesses to a loyalty that defied reason, and to a pain that no child should ever endure. One officer whispered to the other, she wasn't found by the dog. She was saved by him. And as the girl tightened her grip on her only friend, the truth began to sink in. This was not just a rescue. This was survival. The officers knew that soon, decisions had to be made. But for now, they could only watch as a broken child clung to the one soul who had never abandoned her. A dog who had stood between her and darkness, and who was prepared to do it again, no matter the cost. The night was dragging into silence again. The police stood still, afraid that one wrong step would shatter the fragile trust forming between them, the girl, and the dog. The German Shepherd's heavy breathing filled the space, each exhale reminding them that this was not a simple case of a child lost in the dark. Finally, the girl's small voice broke through again. He saved me from them. From home. They said he was just a dog, but he's the only one who ever protected me. Her words cut deep, sharper than any scream. A child's home was supposed to be a sanctuary, but for her, it had been a place of fear. The officers lowered their eyes, fighting the heaviness in their chests. Now it was clear. She hadn't run away because she was lost, she had run because she wanted to survive. The German Shepherd shifted closer to her, pressing his side against her, as if reminding her that she was not alone. His eyes glistened in the faint light, steady and unyielding. This was not just instinct. This was love, loyalty, and sacrifice. The police finally moved slowly forward. One officer crouched at a distance, speaking softly. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. We're here now. You and your friend. You're both safe." The girl shook her head violently, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No, if you take me back, they'll hurt me again. They'll hurt him too." Her sobs grew louder, shaking her tiny frame. The German Shepherd whined softly, nudging her cheek, trying to comfort her. The officers exchanged glances. One of them finally took a deep breath. "We're not sending you back there. Not tonight. Not ever, if what you say is true. But we need to help you. And we need to keep him safe too." For the first time, the girl's eyes flickered with hope, fragile and uncertain. She looked down at her dog, then back at the officers, as though searching for the truth in their words. Moments later, one officer gently extended his hand, not toward her, but toward the German Shepherd. The dog stared at it, then slowly leaned forward to sniff. For the first time that night, the growl faded completely. The barrier was cracking. The girl clutched the dog tighter one last time before whispering, "Okay, but he comes with me." And so, under the pale moonlight, the officers helped her to her feet. The German Shepherd immediately positioned himself at her side, pressing against her small legs to steady her trembling body. Step by step, they began to walk out of the park. The scene was almost surreal. A broken child in worn-out clothes, clutching the thick fur of her protector, walking beside two officers who had just witnessed a bond beyond human understanding. But as they reached the edge of the park, the truth hit even harder. The officers finally saw the bruises on her arms, faint but undeniable. The scars on the German Shepherd's body weren't from stray fights in the street, they were from defending her. This dog had stood between her and violence more times than anyone could count. The officers swallowed their anger, holding back the urge to storm her house that very moment. Instead, they focused on the fragile little soul in front of them, who had trusted them just enough to take the first step into safety. The girl suddenly stopped. She turned, looking back at the park, at the shadows where she had hidden so many times before. "He always found me," she whispered. "Whenever I cried, no matter where I was, he always came." Her small hand reached for the German Shepherd's neck, and he leaned into her touch. The officers felt the weight of her words. This was not just a dog. He was her savior, her family, her world. And then came the silence. A silence that spoke louder than words. They all knew, had it not been for this dog, the girl might not have survived to see another sunrise. When they finally reached the police car, the girl hesitated again. "Please, don't put him in a cage. He hates cages. He saved me from one." The officers nodded. They opened the back seat, letting the German Shepherd climb in beside her. As the car drove away, the girl curled against him, her tears soaking into his fur. The German Shepherd simply closed his eyes, as if finally allowing himself to rest, knowing he had kept his promise one more time. The ride was quiet. No one dared disturb the fragile peace in that backseat. For the first time, the girl's sobs quieted, her breathing steadied, her small hand gripping the dog's fur even in her sleep. By the time they reached safety, the officers knew this night would haunt them forever, not because of the darkness they had uncovered, but because of the light they had witnessed. The unshakable loyalty of a German Shepherd who had chosen to be more than a pet, more than a guard. He had chosen to be a protector of a child when no one else would. And as dawn began to break, casting the first rays of light across the city, the truth remained clear. This was not just a story of a lost girl found in a park. This was the story of a little girl who had been saved by her best friend. A dog whose loyalty was stronger than fear, whose love was stronger than pain. And the reason behind it all, the secret of why she was hiding in the park with him, was enough to leave anyone who heard it completely shattered. Because sometimes, the deepest scars are not the ones on skin, but the ones carried in silence. And that night, silence had finally spoken.